So, this is the final game of the 2021 World Chess Championship, with the boss taking it. And there was one chess meme that really stuck out for me. And, from The Simpsons, and the kids screaming, "Stop! Stop! He's already dead!" Magnus is just wailing on him at this point. And if the match went on any further, it's becoming a farm, as sadly the challenger, I think psychologically he fell apart after game 6. And we've seen uncharacteristic blunders from someone at the elite level, and it's tough to watch. So I think both players are happy to have the match done at this point, and it's tough to recover after a loss like this, but I wish the best for the challenger, and I hope he gets back to top form very, very soon. So let's take a look at the game, shall we? And Nepo has white in this final game, as Carlsen is doing his thing. And bishop c4, least we're not seeing another a4 anti-marshal. Bad decision. Just going to go ahead and say fire the seconds. All right, so knight of 6. And when playing online, number one thing that I always face, and my students face, knight g5. And this is one of those lines I just get nauseated, because you see it so often. It's like, yeah, okay, we got it. But from a correspondence standpoint, there's really no problems that black has if you remember the one key move, d5. And there is some theory here, but after bishop b5 takes, we're following a line between So and Carlsen from 2021. Bishop d3 was attempted by So, knight d5, and black gets a game. He's got dynamic play for the ruined pawn structure. It's not typically my cup of tea, but players like Carlsen can definitely make it work. All right, back to the main game. d3 was played, and this is going to be your typical Italian. And I do feel that this is one of the most common mistakes under 2000 in this structure, that players will play knight c3 just because it's a developmental move. And they're like, all right, yep. They'll either castle and play knight c3 or play knight c3 immediately. And knight c3 has been played 6,000 times in the database, with black winning more games than white. So that should be an indicator that it is not the best choice here. But it's important to me, and this kind of builds on my analysis of this for black's perspective in Openings Oddities. You want to create imbalances in order to try to win. Knight c3 is not an imbalance. It's a symmetrical position. When we play c3, we are doing something that black cannot. You have options to break in the center cleanly in the future. You've got the lever. You're cutting the c6 knight off from using the d4, b4 squares. b4 is typically bad in these structures, but you also have that option. c3 is the more flexible move, and you typically see the knight jockey. Say it's castles, rook e1, the knight d2, knight f1, and then you play let's see what to do. You sometimes throw in h3 and h6 to get full control of those squares so there's no pins, and that's basically the picture of how to play this position. But c3 is a good point to start. d6, castles, and a5. A common enough move, just stopping an expansion with b4 and getting a Luft square for our bishop on a7. And after rook e1, far more common in this position, played in about 100 games, is castling, where we see the very, very typical stuff. And how do we finish development? Bishop b6, challenging the bishop. If the bishop takes, we have the ability to strike in the center at some point with d5. So structurally, easy plans to understand there. Carlsen opts to go for bishop a7. And this has been played in a few high-level encounters. Knight a3, h6, and really no hurry at all. And with this knight maneuver, Nepo is looking to trade and get the knight on a good square. Magnus obliges. And only 3 games in the database here, and one of which was Vakilgrab and Caruana from Paris 2018, where bishop e6 was played, and white got a little something going and was able to win. So I'm going to guess that Magnus was aware of that game, as 2018, if the game happened before the World Championship, definitely Magnus was aware of it. And just from normal preparation's sake, being prepared for the number 2 player in the world, I imagine he looks at all of his games. He decided to go rook e8. a4 stops the knight from moving along. Bishop e6. Takes. After queen b3, the b pawn's hit. We're simply going to defend it. Now, d4 is being prepared. And in the, we'll say the Karpov English, as well as the Italian and many king pawn games, this next idea is seen time and time again. From the time that c3 is played, the forward squares of the knight are taken away. So we're going to look to jockey that knight to a better square, typically g6, where we have some options on the king side to plant on f4, maybe get a little something going. h3, queen d7, and again we see Magnus is not in the hurry to do anything. I just want to get my pieces on decent squares. Rook d8, everybody's starting to get coordinated. We'll clip that. And this looks pretty good for white. Getting full control over the f5 square. But d5 immediately, looking to get something going. And from here, I feel that black is fully equalized. Just the knight alone sitting on f5 isn't really going to do it. And black is starting to get the more aggressive pawn structure. So it's easy to understand d4, where we begin to liquidate. And instead of just capturing, rook e4, important move, looking to create imbalances. Queen c2, bothering the rook, none of that. And here, I'm not sure if this was a quick move or what, but we have another bad blunder from the challenger. Much stronger, but in the match situation, you got to play for a win with white. Would have been rook takes d4, where we end up in a situation where undoubtedly this game is going to be a draw. But in the main game, g3 was played. If you are a pause your video and figure it out type of cat, this is your time right now. All right, hopefully you saw what Magnus did in the game. And there's a number of points where the engine says, no, do this instead. But I got to say, from a human perspective, the way Magnus played this was not the most difficult route, which is good. And it was clean. There wasn't really counter chances for white to get back in the game. So there may be some, well, he could have done this instead. I'm not really focused on that at this point. DE3, check, check. And on king g1, like for instance, the engine liked e takes f2 here, but I like getting the extra piece in, knight f5. d6, trying to confuse the matter some. All right, big threats, looking to threaten mate. Has to defend that. Check. Big threats again. Check. And we go to the rook and pawn ending. And the first thing I notice when looking at this is, one, we have the outside passed h-pawn. So you cannot trade rooks, as it will be a lost king and pawn in game for that reason. While the white king would have to worry about the pawn ever moving forward, our king will walk up and he's going to get in one way or another. You can slow me down with b3, but I am going to trade some pawns, break through, and win. So when looking at endgames, I definitely recommend my students to process them as what changes do you want to see and what changes are you trying to avoid. And here, keeping tension and not allowing excessive amount of pawns to be traded is going to keep some winning chances for us. So rooks are designed to go after the base pawns, and they want to be on the 2nd or 7th rank. Since white's rook is passively defending, I want to be able to play rook d2. King f3 is played. And on rook d2, rook b1, and Nepo's banking on the fact that the rook can play b4. So how can we get the most out of this? Well, we've got a 3 versus 3 on the queen side, and it doesn't seem we can really do much over there other than wait for b4, where then we may have some targets. So in the meantime, we're going to use our majority, g6, and on b4, we would rather take, rather than the opponent take, as it keeps our pawns connected and stronger. Now rook a2, eyeing the isolated pawn. h5. The dual purpose move g6 was to give the king a luft on g7, as well as extend the passer, giving him something to worry about. Now white's going all in, trying to go after the c-pawn. So rook c2. And on rook b3, got to worry about this guy. And good calculation by the boss. Check. Key move here. Check. The deflection is going to get the win. And I don't fault Nepo at all in the phase of the game going into this line, as he was still playing for a win, still had to try in order to get back in the match. So good effort by the boss from start to finish in this one. What can you say about this World Championship match? And it was asked during the press conference, do you think after the win in this match, this gives you, more accomplishment, or you're the greatest of all time now? And I like Magnus's answer. He's like, that's not mine to judge. And by no means is his career done at this point. I still think we have much to look forward to in the career of the boss moving forward. And as he improves and as he continues to fight, chess is going to get better and grow. I think he's an excellent world champion and look forward to his future goals and accomplishments. And I think everybody's got the question on their mind, who's going to be the next challenger? And will the 18-year-old Firouzja, who youngest 2800 of all time, will he win the candidates and be Magnus's next match? See, if it were me in Magnus's position, I would want that match. And when you beat that younger player of the next generation, I would be like, I'm done, retired. If you retire at the high point of your career, you end up having that mystique like Fischer had. Fischer still gets in the conversation of greatest player of all time because of how dominant he was, but that domination period was only for a year, objectively. He did amazing things. But I do feel that due to certain psychological things that stuck out during his match with Spassky, like for instance, you can watch a number of different documentaries and read text, that the match almost didn't happen. It's hard to get Fischer even on the plane to get him over there. And once the match was going on, he forfeited a game due to complaints. And Spassky was a sportsman, and had Spassky not said, all right, I really want to beat this guy, the match wouldn't have taken place. And objectively, I feel like Spassky should have gotten on the plane and went home when Fischer forfeited the game, because he had every right to do so. I feel like if the match would have happened with Karpov, Fischer would have lost due to some technicality. I don't know that Karpov had the strength and experience at that time period to outplay Fischer. That is debatable. But Fischer had a layoff of 3 years, and that's quite a long time to not be playing at the top level and really pushing and testing yourself. But definitely, if Karpov would have gotten an advantage like Spassky did, the entire Soviet system would have been like, all right, comrade, get on the plane, come home. You won. Congratulations. So chess was worse for Fischer leaving, but definitely it's not the same with Magnus. This is, what, the 5th World Championship match that he's won now? You got to know when to call it. And to me, in that next match, if he faces Firouzja and wins, that's going to make him the greatest of all time. But I've said this from the start. I'm a huge fan of Magnus. But to me, I wanted him to lose one of these matches. Why? Because imagine if a fire was lit underneath arguably the greatest player of all time again to push him to even greater extent. We're going to see 2,900 rating out of him at that point. I think he's been setting records all these games without a loss. But what drives someone who's at the pinnacle? It's a good question. And with those thoughts, I'll leave you at the end of this video and the match. And please, if you have questions or you have a different opinion on some of the things, it's definitely an opinion. And keep in mind, I love doing these videos, but feel free to disagree in a respectful and appropriate manner. Happens a lot where people disagree and they're just mean. No need for that. I'm not going to be mean back. I'm just going to block you if you're rude. I love being a creator on YouTube. Bye. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for sticking with me through this entire series, or just for any part of it. I really appreciate your support. And what can we say other than go Magnus?